The Last Note of Autumn. In the quiet town of Elmsworth, where golden leaves whispered secrets through cobblestone streets, lived a girl named Clara. She was a violinist, young, quiet, and full of hidden dreams. Every afternoon, she played her music by the window of her small apartment, pouring her soul into each note, never knowing that someone was always listening. Across the street, in an old bookstore tucked between ivy-covered walls, worked a boy named Adrian. He was a writer, one who loved words but had lost faith in happy endings. After his parents' sudden passing 3 years earlier, Adrian had buried his heart beneath dusty pages and unread letters. But Clara's music, delicate and mournful, found its way into his silence. Every day at 4 p.m., as her bow touched the strings, Adrian would pause whatever he was doing to listen. He never saw her clearly, only a silhouette against fading sunlight. Still, her music became the soundtrack to his healing. One rainy day in October, the music stopped. Adrian waited for it, as usual, but the violin remained silent. He felt a strange unease, one he couldn't explain. The next day, it was still quiet. On the third day, something in him cracked. He closed his bookshop early, crossed the street, and left a small envelope at Clara's doorstep. Inside was a note that simply read, "Your music has been the light in my darkest season. I hope you're okay." From the boy across the street. Clara found the letter that evening. Tears welled in her eyes. She hadn't played because her mother, who had been ill for years, had just passed away. Clara had thought no one noticed her playing, yet here was a note from a stranger who had been listening all along. The next day, the music returned, but this time, it was different. Gentler. Hopeful. Adrian, now filled with a strange, bright nervousness, replied again. He left her a poem. Clara responded with a pressed flower. Days turned into weeks, and the notes became conversations, silent, but deep. They shared favorite books, drawings, stories from childhood, all without ever meeting face to face. Until one crisp morning, Adrian wrote, "Would you like to meet?" Clara stood across the street, her heart pounding. She held her violin. Adrian waited in front of the bookstore, holding a bouquet of dried lavender. When their eyes finally met, it was as if the world paused. No words were spoken, only a smile, shy but sure. Clara lifted her violin and played, not for the town, not for the world, but for him. And Adrian, for the first time in years, believed again in love. Whispers of the winter wind. In the quaint little town of Elmsworth, nestled between snow-capped hills and evergreen forests, winter had always brought a strange kind of magic. The streets glistened with frost, and the air was always filled with the scent of pinewood and distant chimneys. For Emily Carter, it was her favorite time of the year. Emily, a 28-year-old writer, had returned to Elmsworth after living in New York for almost a decade. Her career had gone well, but the city had left her emotionally drained. Seeking peace, she moved back into her grandmother's old cottage at the edge of town. There, wrapped in cozy sweaters, she spent her mornings writing by the fireplace and her evenings walking through the silent, snow-covered trails. One morning, while shopping at the town's tiny bookstore, she noticed a man standing in the poetry section. He looked lost in thought, running his fingers gently across the spines of books. He wore a navy coat dusted with snow and had a quiet, thoughtful presence that intrigued her. Their eyes met briefly. He gave a small nod. Emily smiled. Looking for something specific? He looked up. Actually, yes. Something that makes sense of winter and heartbreak. She chuckled. You won't find both in one poem, but you might in a good story. That was how she met Lucas Hale, a former soldier who had returned to Elmsworth to rebuild his late father's cabin by the lake. He spoke softly, almost as if he was afraid his voice might disturb the stillness of the world. There was something broken in him, yet something remarkably tender. Over the weeks, they saw each other more, at the bookstore, the coffee shop, the frozen lake trail. He learned about her stories and love for fairy tales. She learned about the war, the loss of his brother, and the silence he carried in his heart. One night, as snowflakes danced outside and the town shimmered under the moonlight, they sat in her cottage sipping tea. Emily handed him a notebook. What's this? He asked. A story, she said. Yours. I think you've been writing it without words for a long time. He opened it, seeing pages with questions, quotes, blank spaces, an invitation to heal. That night, they didn't speak much. But when he reached for her hand, it felt like something long frozen had begun to thaw. As winter melted into spring, their bond deepened. They repaired the old cabin together, planting flowers in the garden, painting the faded wood. Lucas began to write again, letters, thoughts, small poems, slowly finding his voice. And Emily, once lost in the bustle of a distant city, found her peace in his quiet love. One evening, by the edge of the lake, under a sky painted with twilight hues, Lucas knelt down with a small ring made of silver and wood. It's not fancy, he whispered, but it's real. Like this love. Like us. Tears welled in Emily's eyes as she nodded, her voice caught in the wind. Yes, she whispered. Yes. The whispers of the winter wind, once cold and lonely, now carried promises of forever. A Song for Winter. In the quiet town of Elmridge, winter came not just with snow but with silence, a silence so deep that it seemed to hush every sorrow and memory. Elmridge was a place where time moved slowly, where the trees stood like sentinels in the frost, and where every year, the lake froze in a glassy shimmer. Clara Hart had returned to Elmridge after 5 years in the city. She was once the town's musical prodigy, known for her haunting voice and the violin she played like it whispered secrets from another world. But after a bitter heartbreak and a failed music career, Clara had given up performing. She came home to take care of her aging grandmother and to escape the noise of a life that hadn't turned out as she'd dreamed. One snowy morning, Clara visited the old music shop near the square, a place filled with dusty records, forgotten pianos, and memories of childhood. As she browsed through sheet music, she heard someone tuning a guitar in the back room. The chords were soft, hesitant, yet full of emotion. She followed the sound, curious. There, sitting by the window, was a man she hadn't seen in over a decade. Daniel? He turned, surprised. Clara Hart? I thought you were in New York, or somewhere brighter than Elmridge. Daniel Blake had been her childhood friend and first love. Back in high school, they played music together, shared stolen kisses beneath autumn leaves, and wrote songs about forever. But life had other plans, college, distance, dreams that didn't match. They had lost touch. Daniel now owned the music shop after his father passed. He had grown quieter, his hair a little longer, his smile tinged with something softer. He invited her to sit. They talked for hours, catching up over coffee, laughing about old songs, and sharing quiet regrets. Clara felt something warm she hadn't felt in years, a sense of being understood. Over the following weeks, Clara began visiting the shop every day. She helped organize music, played the piano again, and sometimes, after the store closed, she and Daniel would sing together, harmonizing like they did when they were 17. The town began to whisper again, in hopeful tones, about the two musicians finding each other. One evening, while snow fell thick outside, Daniel handed Clara a notebook. "It's a song I started writing years ago," he said, his voice low. "But I could never finish it. I think it was waiting for you." Clara opened the notebook. The lyrics were tender. About lost time, second chances, and the sound of winter carrying love back home. She looked up, tears in her eyes. "Do you want to finish it together?" So they did. In a small concert at the Elmridge Winter Festival, Clara and Daniel performed the song for the first time. The townspeople, bundled in scarves and joy, stood in awe. As the last note rang through the frozen air, Clara looked at Daniel, and knew. She had been searching for happiness in the noise of the world, only to find it in the quiet of Elmridge, in the heart she had left behind, and in the boy who had waited through the season.